take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Welcome to Life in Red.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 14 of the podcast. Special guest today, because every guest is special. But Darcie, welcome.
Hello, thanks.
No problem. You, again, like a couple episodes ago, I mean, we know each other kind of, but not 100%. It's not like everyone else where I know everybody about their life story. Like, we've a friend through a friend.
Yes.
But I don't actually really know who Darcie is. So this is going to be interesting. You are an engineer.
Yes, I am.
Which is crazy because apparently that's like one of the hardest things people could ever do in school.
I mean, it was definitely difficult. I'm not going to lie about that, but I enjoyed it and I got a job and it worked out for me so far. Was school really that difficult? People, I know I went to Carleton and like engineering, it always seems like it's the most pristine thing you can do. You get the jacket or the ring or they have like all these parties. Like it's almost like, I want to say cult, but it's not the right word. But I mean, I would say it's pretty culty. I went to Queen's University in Kingston.
And that's, for those of not in Canada, Queen's is like, that's upper echelon.
It's pretty prestigious, especially for engineering. So I would say, yes, it was difficult. My degree actually took math and engineering. So it's sort of equivalent to engineering physics, but with the math side instead of the physics side. So I did some theoretical math courses. Some of the courses I took were in my fourth year were actually grad school courses, part of my degree. And I think there was about 20 people who graduated from my discipline at Queen's. So it was
20 people.
Yes, of the 600 or so engineers that were at Queen's in my year.
So it can break you.
Yes. My year only started with 22, so I think only 2 people dropped out. But the year below me started with 60, and they graduated with about 20 as well.
Wow.
So a lot of people it was a bit too much.
So before we get to learn about you and how you got there in this story, I want to dissect this a little bit because there's a lot of little pieces. And from like my layman cave-in brain who just likes to talk and be creative and like does not understand math or engineering or anything. What is an engineer? Because people hear it all the time, engineering, and maybe I'm just the dumb one. But what does it mean to be an engineer? I'm sure there's lots of different kinds of engineers for one.
Yes.
But like what do they bring to society? Like the society as a whole.
So there's so many disciplines. There's civil engineering, which I am now, chemical engineering, mechanical engineering, like aerospace. So it touches on sort of everything that you could have in society. So for me, my particular job is building roads and bridges so people can get from A to B in mostly Ontario. But then sort of the chemical engineers, there's 2 disciplines. So one could be more like your water plants, and then there's mechanical engineering, so people could build cars. So they would be the ones who would design the different aspects of a car. So it's very broad. So typically when I tell people I'm an engineer, they'll say, well, what kind? And then I get more into what I know.
Okay, so the way I'm kind of like conceptualizing it is like the engineer is basically, and this is a very general broad sense, but the person who kind of decides and plans like the design of whatever discipline they are. So whether it's you design the roadways and make sure how it's all going to work, like an aerospace engineer would like make the design and everything that's needed to essentially build the aircraft or the spaceship.
Exactly.
Like, you're like the one who like this is how it's supposed to work and how it's going to work.
Yep.
And then you get like that's
I would say that's very accurate.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like, we depend on engineers a lot.
I like to think so.
Okay, so why do you put roundabouts in things first off? Because I think that's everyone's number one pet peeve.
So my boss has this whole spiel about roundabouts, and there's been tons of studies. So if you go to Europe, when you're driving through an intersection, you're probably driving through a roundabout. In North America, we have mostly conventional signalized intersections. So your regular signals for cars, and then there's the pedestrian walking man. So roundabouts are actually safer for vehicles. I can get into a whole technical thing, but there's actually like less conflict points. So there's less points in a roundabout where cars could collide with each other, as well as could collide with a pedestrian. So when you think about it, as you're a pedestrian, you're crossing a roundabout. You cross from one side to the middle of the lanes into a median, and then wait again for it to be safe to pass or to continue to cross, versus when you're at a conventional signalized intersection, you have drivers are worried about, making a right-hand turn on a red light because they're trying to beat the car, but then there's pedestrians that they could hit, versus a roundabout forces you to slow down as you approach the intersection. And that's another big thing is it does force you to slow down. So if you have signalized intersection on like a 60-kilometer-per-hour road, people can zoom through that light, versus a roundabout you have to slow down to it's about 30 kilometers per hour through the roundabout. So from a safety perspective, they're much better.
There you go. Does not give people it gives me anxiety when it's like 5 different lanes and you're like stuck in the middle and you're like, no, I gotta get out there, and you're trying to go through. And I
mean, luckily we're starting small. So in Ontario, you typically start with a single lane roundabout, so you only have one lane to worry about going through to introduce to a municipality, and then you might introduce a 2-lane roundabout for a busier intersection. And we're just not used to them in Ontario or North America mostly, right? In Europe, they're driven the way they're supposed to be because everyone learned how to drive in them. But in Ontario, there's very few municipalities that have roundabouts for you to practice on your driving test.
I guess that's true. Like Europeans are like inclined to just know what to, like, that's been their whole, like the Arc de Triomphe or whatever, like there's like, it seems like there's like 12 different lanes, but they're just like zipping in and out, and you're like, whoa, I can't even like catch on.
I mean, I don't think I could drive through it, or it would be scary. What's the movie Christmas Vacation, where they're driving around and they're like, oh, Big Ben, and he just is stuck in the roundabout and can't get out. I wouldn't want to drive through that either, but they're used to it.
So it's for safety. I mean, that's the beauty of this podcast, because I never would have thought about asking about roundabouts, but here we go. And now everyone knows about roundabouts.
Yes. Yep.
I want to touch on math later, because that's super interesting. I suck at math, like horribly. But keeping on the engineering thing. So, what is it about the school that makes it so hard to get through? Is it like why does it have a stigma, whether it's justified or not, which it seems like it is? But like, what makes it so hard, and so that people like literally are stressed to the max about engineering school?
Yeah, I mean, I can only talk about my experience at Queen's, and I mean, I've only taken engineering as an undergrad, so I'm not sure about everyone else. But I think it's very technical based. So all the courses that I take are well, the ones that I took are very technical. You have to know sort of the theory behind the equations that you're using to solve a problem, math or physics, or it could be anything, computer engineering. So I know for me, in my first year, I think I took 7 courses in my first semester of first year, and 7 or 8 in my second semester of first year. So I know for a lot of people that's a lot, and it's very technical. So I think, I mean, math and science isn't everyone's strong suit, but for engineers, we do okay.
Yeah. So it like, just there's a lot of like different, is it hard problems, or it's just a lot of work?
It does get difficult for sure. If you think about it, like, did you take calculus in high school? No. So calculus is sort of like the very basic form of engineering, the ones that I took, right? So like math and mechanical engineering, and then there's physics. So I think it's more the technical aspect of getting through those courses that is difficult for most people. So when you think about the hard courses in high school, it was more the sciences and the maths is typically what people think of as difficult courses. So it's that, and then you build upon those basic sort of the basic knowledge that you learned in high school. So it definitely gets more difficult and more complex. So in physics in high school, you might have dealt with like one moving system. In engineering, or like the courses I took, you end up dealing with multiple systems that work together, and you know, your equations are based on what happened in like a previous part of the problem. So I think that's probably why people equate it as being difficult, is because it's definitely technical, and they are difficult.
She just looked at me because she knew that was like right over my head. I'm like, moving systems, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So like, what do you like? How are you trying to? Like, what are the problems so explain like a moving system? Like, take me through like a typical math problem.
I'll try.
Because you're not just solving for X, right? Like, I can do that.
I mean, a lot of the time you are, right?
Oh.
You're trying to find it's not necessarily X, but some variable. So you're trying to find like the friction of the wheels on a road. And that's like very basic, and I can't think of any specific problems in university that I had, but I took it's like a kinematics and dynamics course. So it's moving systems. So things like, did you take physics in high school?
No.
So it's
if it had math.
So basically, physics is like
that.
the moving parts of something. So you would think of like cars. Cars have like the wheels that move, and and the axles, and there's friction that's caused by all those things on the different parts that it's rubbing against, or even like what's it called, like. I can't think of what it is. It's been so long, but the air is slowing you down.
I was gonna say like wind speed. Like,
exactly.
Do you have to do like? Is there like an equation for gravity or something?
Oh yeah, there's.
Oh my God.
And there's a constant on Earth, and there's different gravities for each of the planets. So Moon's gravity is different than Earth's gravity.
Yeah. So you have to take all that.
Yeah.
And like put it in, and you can't just use a calculator, can you?
No.
Do you have to show your work?
You do have to show your work to get the marks to pass.
Oh.
But one of the courses that I really liked, because I did math and engineering, but in the mechanics option. So half of my courses were mechanical engineering. So we did like the kinematics and dynamics, and we also did thermodynamics. So it's like the entropy and enthalpy. So like the energy in and the energy out of systems. And a lot of it's dealing with like heat. So thermodynamics can progress into turbo machinery, which is like turbines on a airplane. And so it kind of starts very basic and at first, and then it can definitely sort of snowball into these giant problems that you're trying to solve.
Which happened to me. I was like, I can do 2 + 2, and then all of a sudden it was out of control.
That's about it. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot. That's
fun.
So
those are my experiences, but yeah.
So what was it about engineering that made you like that? Did you always want to be were you 3 years old being like, I'm going to be an engineer?
No, definitely not. When I was growing up, when people asked me what I wanted to do, I said I wanted to go to Queen's.
That was it.
That was it. I'm going to Queen's. I did really well in school, kept my marks up because I knew you needed to have a good average. And then I was done with high school in grade 12, definitely didn't want to stay back for a year. So then I just Googled a career with math and science. And engineering was the first thing that came up.
Wow.
Yeah, so so I applied. I applied for chemical engineering actually at Queen's, and I applied for pure math at Waterloo and engineering here in Ottawa, and got in at Queen's, and 100% that was my top choice. So that's how I got started.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And I can't. I find it fascinating how, the differences in humans everywhere, but you who's you seeming love math.
I do, yes.
You're passionate about it, the way you're talking about it, you're smiling and laughing. You're like, oh, this equation, I'm like, but me, it gives me such anxiety to even think about math, advanced math, easy arithmetic's fine, but it's just doesn't the math doesn't add up in my head that people can actually enjoy.
Yeah, I mean,
is it the problem solving aspect of it? Is it?
I think so, and numbers, working with numbers, like I love when you plug numbers into your equation, you get an answer, and it's logical, right? So the equations that you use make sense to me, and it gives you an answer that you're expecting, and if it's not what you expected, you probably did it wrong. But that's the part that I love, that it's logical, it's problem solving.
Do you have trouble with creative writing, or like formulating arguments and essays or anything, like, you know what I mean? Like kind of like the opposite, like the people who aren't good at math go into that type of stuff, like the theoretical
English was
work.
definitely my least favorite subject in high school, and you had to take English.
Yeah,
I still did well at it because I understood sort of what they're looking for in English.
Yeah,
and I was I could write an essay. I'm not good at it, and I'm definitely not a creative writer. I do on the side have a blog. It's called Past Opportunities, for those of you who are interested.
Oh, we'll get to the plugs. Don't you worry.
So I mean, for that, it's more just like me writing about my experiences traveling. But yeah, I mean, English was my least favorite subject. But I write every day in my job. I write reports that are submitted to the public for public review, submitted to the ministry for environmental clearance for a project. So I still have to write every day, which there are a lot of engineering jobs where you have to write reports or, lab.
But I think with all science is kind of like that, right? Like,
exactly.
I mean, scientists, after you do your research, you still have to type up your findings and go through that whole process.
Yes.
But I'm just trying to see, and I mean, everyone's different. I understand that. But just you and I sitting here, if there's a difference in the way the brain truly works, where there's almost an opposite, you can only have one or the other.
Yes.
You can't be good at you can't be really good at math and also I'm just wondering if I were Darcie, can you sit down and I'm gonna give you 3 objects and I want you to write a story, and I'll give you 15 minutes. Would you be able to formulate this pretty good story? Would you have trouble with that, or would you relish the opportunity? Just trying to understand how the brains work.
Yeah, I mean, I would say for creatively, writing is definitely not my strong suit. I'm more into the arts, so I did art in high school. I'm into photography now, so that side of the creative thing. But I have heard math and art are very hand in hand, or math and music. There's sort of a lot of logical things behind it, but for creative writing, it's definitely not something that I'm passionate about or interested in. I love to read myself, but I don't think I could ever write a short story or a novel.
Yeah, and you that's a good point, that art and music are very. I mean, it's creative, but it also is very logic based. Every note has, I guess, of numeric value. It's not what that is, but what that note that note is supposed to make. So there's a symmetry there, I guess. Because I think, I mean, again, generalizing a lot, but people with you see it all the time, math prodigies or people with autism. You'll see videos kid with autism just amazes people on the piano or something. It kind of goes through this. Maybe it's the same part of the brain. I'm not a scientist. I don't know.
I'm not sure about that. I know there's sort of there is a correlation between people who are good at math and people who are good at music. And I'm not entirely sure what that is, but and there have been, I know a few people who they were either taking music courses or were doing a dual degree in engineering and music.
Really?
Yeah. So it does sort of go together.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Even dual majoring scares me.
I could not imagine.
Well, and engineering, right? Else. People, all I ever heard, and just going back to it, everyone, talk about how hard engineering is. Yeah. That they're going to go through another...
To do something on top of that.
And, I had people who had music degrees on a couple episodes ago, and, their world's pretty intense, too. All these different disciplines have... To try to combine them, I don't know if I could.
I couldn't do it.
I'm
but...
just I just want to do my podcast and go to work. So you graduated and you ended up getting a job, obviously, as you said at the beginning. Take me through that little bit of that journey. So, I mean, I don't know too much about the engineering field, but it would seem to be like, at least traditionally, it would be a male-dominated field, if I'm assuming correctly.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah,
yeah. And even in university, I think Queen's had a 25% percentage of women who were in engineering, which is very high for engineering at a university. And so to put something in perspective, I went to a curling event for municipal engineers of Ontario. So all people who work for municipalities, and we were invited. And I was the only girl out of 40 people who were there.
Wow.
And I mean, I'm used to it now, right? So most of my courses were men, and at work, of the engineers that work for us, I think there's me and one other, or maybe two. So yeah, definitely not many of us. But no, it was good. I'd done an internship when I was at university, so I took a year off and worked as a mechanical engineer. I didn't like it, and it wasn't for me. And so when I went back for my fourth year, I thought about doing my master's, but I wasn't sure exactly like what direction I wanted to go for the rest of my career. So when I graduated, I just applied to everything. There's a Queen's career website, which I think most universities have, and I just every day went through and picked ones that I thought I could apply to, and just kind of stumbled into my job. Luckily, I got it, and I've been doing well, and I love it, which I feel really lucky having been able to find something that I'm that passionate about. And I didn't take civil engineering at school, right? So that was really good for me. But yes, I definitely find there's a lot of men around.
You were I'm gonna do the math in my head. So you were what? You were 23, 24?
Yes.
When you got your first engineering full-time job?
23.
23. So
yes.
Young Darcie, 23, ready to start the rest of her life, gets her first full-time job at an engineering firm.
Yep.
And it's male-dominated.
Yes.
That's intimidating. Like, that would be intimidating for me as a male.
Yeah.
To go into this whole new thing with, people who know everything, and I'm just some young kid. What do I know, right? Like, you see that all the time, but I think it's a special case in a heavily dominated field with a young woman. Like, that's big. How did you handle that? Like, that seems like a lot to put on a young person.
So I mean, I actually had started my job working from home. So I met with my boss every Friday, and at like a McDonald's that was down the street, and we'd go over a couple reports that I was working on, or technical documents that he wanted me to work on and to learn. So I didn't really have a big office to go to and be intimidated by a lot of people. And the other thing for me is that I work for a small company, so I don't have a lot of people that I compete against, right? So I mean, I don't know how competitive engineering is to work your way up, but working for a small company, I kind of got to touch everything. So everything that we work on in the company, and then go from there. And I would say all my coworkers are very understanding, and willing to mentor me, which has been wonderful. Yeah. And that is how I've learned everything that I've learned on the job. So that it wasn't super intimidating at my job, but there have been instances where things have come up, and because I'm a woman, it's changed things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to get to that. Don't you?
Okay.
I just I thought it's interesting, because I faced kind of like this same thing in the sense that I also started at a smaller place, and was able to touch a little bit of everything and learn, and had great people. I know some other people have similar experiences, and I think that that might be one of the keys for young people. And I've never worked in government. I don't know. I have some friends in it, and they're doing well, and that's great. But starting off your career at this very basic level where you're allowed to have a lot of different experiences, you're allowed to make a lot of mistakes. I don't know if you made mistakes. I made mistakes.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And have the opportunity to learn from other people who are willing to mentor. I think that's so key in building, young leaders.
Yeah.
grooming people for higher up jobs, or like really taking your career off rather than working from some like super major corporation where sure, maybe you get a great paycheck, but like your job's pretty one-dimensional.
Yeah, and I've heard, I mean, I only have my experience working as, me in my job, and I have heard typically if you work for one of those sort of mega engineering companies, you might only do one thing. So you might only do noise studies or traffic studies, or write reports or proposals. But for me, I do all of that. So I have, I was given a task to do a simple noise study, and sort of now I've become the acoustics engineer, of course.
Oh,
mentoring
noise.
under something. Yeah,
I thought
noise.
you kept saying noise.
Oh,
I was like,
like acoustics.
yeah.
So now I do that, and like I write environmental assessment reports, which is sort of a major thing that we do. Public consultation. So like I wouldn't have had that opportunity, or I wouldn't have the opportunity when I started so young to do that. So that's been really good about working for. So
now you
small.
give like public consultations.
So I don't give presentations.
Okay.
But we have like public events.
Yeah.
So we have to consult with the public for the jobs that we do. So when you're building a new road, or widening it, changing the lane configuration. Those are all things that you have to consult with the public. So we call them public information centers. And I will go to those and I'll talk to members of the public about their issues that they have with the project, or if they have new ideas for us. If they want something different, then I go and I talk to them and
tell them to just comment on Facebook like everybody else.
Yeah.
I'm sure you can hear all about it.
Send us a comment sheet online.
So many interesting things. I find it fascinating, truly.
Yeah, I love it.
Acoustics expert? Is that what you just classified yourself?
I wouldn't say expert, but
okay.
working up to that, yeah.
Okay. What is that? Because that's interesting.
Yeah, so the sort of biggest example for me is if you're building a new road, and say the road is going behind a row of houses. So the cars are going to generate noise that the residents who live in those houses are going to hear. And it's a negative effect of the road. So yes, you're getting people to and from where they need to go, but then the people who are in their houses have to hear it. So there's different thresholds. So if it's a residence or if it's an office building, with offices that people are in during the day, then you want to keep the noise level below a certain level. So we do assessments, and like I run the through a noise program, and then it spits out sort of what the noise level is, and then we would look at, well, would we put up a noise barrier so that it shield some of the noise from reaching the residents. So if they're sleeping at night, or if they're working at home or in their backyard on a Saturday enjoying a beer on their patio.
Is that the big walls you see on the side?
That's the big
my
walls
God,
that you
I'm
see
figuring it all out here.
Yeah. So that's the other thing I really like about my job is I drive every day. I see the impact of my job every day. So yeah.
Okay.
So those, huge walls along the Queensway, the Highway 417, those are noise barriers to protect people from the noise of the traffic. Yeah.
I thought it was for like cars getting in accidents and like flying off or something.
That's the concrete barriers. They're much shorter that are on the side of the road. That's what those are for.
Do you do those too?
There's standards for having those and where you put them.
Okay, yeah, because now I just went on another off branch, as you said something. But back to like the main point here, because I want to get to like the grand finale. Well, it's not the finale of your career, but like the super interesting thing. So, I think you already said it, so spoiler. You're a partner at this firm.
Yes.
And you are like, you're under 30. I'm not going to point everyone out your age at this point. But like, so you have quite a bit of power, I would assume. Like, what does being a partner mean of an engineering firm? So
it's different, and there's like different levels. So basically, being a partner is having ownership of the company. So it's a corporation, so not like a partnership. So like I'm not personally liable, but so yeah, I have ownership of the company. So in my experience, I've been able to see the business side of the company, not just the technical side. So making business decisions like hiring and firing, sort of what we're going to pursue as a job. So typically we only really go after things that we think we could win, because it's a lot of money to propose, to make proposals and submit them. So I get to see that. So like every Friday we have a call and we decide what we want to go after for jobs. And then, seeing sort of like the money side of it. So billings and accounts receivable, accounts payable, what comes in, what comes out. So that's sort of the major bonus of being a partner, is seeing the business aspect of it.
And when you see, I find like, not whether capitalism is right or wrong is not the discussion I want to get into, but once you start seeing how that stuff works and you become involved in the human aspect of running a business, or the budget, or spending, or all that, or pitching, all that stuff, is when you really start to see how the world kind of works. So I'll give you an example of this. In my early, late teens, early 20s, when I saw if I would have saw the minimum wage was going to $14, I would have been like, this is incredible. I'm going to get paid $14. Amazing. Yep. Like, would have been so happy. Like, it's great. But now, once I've learned sort of how business operates, whether I put my personal opinion on the matter is an aside, I have to look at it from a professional lens as well. I'm like, yo, this isn't a good idea. This is actually going to probably hurt more than it's going to actually help. You're just going to get taxed more. There's going to be more, everything else is going to go up along with the wage. Yes. People are going to lose jobs in the lower sectors because companies aren't going to lose profits to pay more.
No.
Like, that's not a thing. Yeah. And it takes this like kind of naiveness, this like jaded lens of how you see the world once you get into that.
I agree.
And you're like, well, again, putting your personal opinion of politics aside, it's like you look at it professionally, you're like, ooh, yeah, that's not good, guys. Like, it's not gonna work out in our favor, I don't think.
And the thing is, I mean, specifically talking about minimum wage is like, yes, everyone's gonna be making more, but then things start costing more because you have to continue to pay your employees and your overhead and the cost of your business. So the cost of your business has gone up. So now the cost of doing things has gone up.
Exactly. And that's what, young-hearted, awesome people who believe in this like utopian world. It's like, maybe one day we'll get there. I don't know. But like, I think it's super important that young people try to get an understanding of how business works. Yes. And I wish more businesses, I get some of it's confidential, but gave young people more of a investment into how the company actually runs and what they're looking for. I think it would just work wonders on people, even outside of their own business, like politically, and just understanding like the tax situation or all that stuff. It's just like, I just know, as you said that, I was like, it was such an eye-opening experience for me, and it totally changed how I saw things.
Yes. Yeah.
From especially like a economic
exactly
sense.
And I would say I'm more invested in the company because it means more to me, and I get to see what happens when you fire or you hire somebody and now you have to spend time training. So what I could have done in say 3 hours takes them 6 hours, and I still spend an hour reviewing their work. So when you hire somebody, it takes a lot to train them, and I do know, we have had a couple people who have taken a job with us with the expectation of not being there for a long time, and that hurts. Hurts us financially, right? Because we're investing our time and money into somebody who we hope is going to be there in the long term. So I know, that business side of things, and to one person it might be, well, then they've had a job for 4 months, but then to the business it means something different. So that has opened my eyes about, trying to take a job for something.
It's it affects you personally, because then you understand the economic impact of it. But it's such a dance right now with the economy and employers and employees, because there's a lot of people looking for jobs, and there are actually a lot of jobs depending what you want to do, where you want to work. But it's the dance of like, not every company is loyal to their employees.
That's true.
Some definitely are good, some are not. So from an employee perspective, it's like this company doesn't care about me anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't care if I work this job for 3 weeks and then I quit for another better job.
Yeah.
So I get that part. And that's why I'm such a big believer in companies being like, if you take care of your employees, like they'll take care of your business.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's super important. And I don't think enough worry about it because they're so worried about the bottom line.
Yeah.
And I get that part too.
Yeah.
But I think investing in your employees, their well-being, their happiness, their investment in the company. Like if they're invested in the company, like you just said, like you're going to care a lot more about your work.
Exactly. And yeah, for sure.
Or you're going to go above and beyond, as opposed to people who just hate their life, that are just like doing the bare minimum not to get fired, and then they leave, they take shortcuts.
Exactly.
Like that's a huge economic impact on itself, right?
Yeah.
Instead of generating revenue, everyone's just worried about cost cutting.
Exactly. I think for smaller companies, you get more of you're more personal versus working for a big company. You might just be a number because you're just there to crank out reports. But for a smaller company, I think in anything, whether it's engineering or like a small business owner or like a family restaurant, it means more to have the people work and be hard workers. Yeah.
It's crazy. I preach this to anyone who listens, and not a lot of people listen so far, right? Because I'm young. I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't, I don't understand how business works. And a lot of the extent it's true, I don't understand fully how the business works. But I do know, that what I feel and, talking to other people, it's like, especially millennials, like they get the rap or whatever, but they want value in their work.
Yes, definitely.
They want to feel appreciated. They want some sort of justification in what they're doing, and that it has some sort of meaning, whether that's a charitable or helping people or whatever it is. But that's what they want. They don't want to just be a number and push out a Excel spreadsheet every day and then leave.
And when you think about it, most people spend 8 to 10 hours a day at their job. So you want to go in and feel appreciated and feel like you're doing something and making a difference at the company, wherever you're working. So I think that probably has a lot to do with it, is you're spending so much time there, you should enjoy it. Yeah. And
like that's why I'm glad, like a person like you went and you found passion and you love what you do, and that's great. And I know sometimes there's bullshit that comes, and that's what I say with every job.
Exactly.
Like you still have the stuff you don't like.
Yeah.
But, similar thing, like I don't think of it, I know it's work, but at the same time, it's like I don't really have a problem with it.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, oh, you need me to work 14 hours today? Like, oh, like that's cool. Like,
yeah. Or I mean, for me, it'll be, I've done a study, like a noise study, and I've done something wrong, or something needs to change. And I'm like, okay, well, like I'll go fix that. Versus, instead of huffing and puffing about it, I don't mind making that change. I'm like, I'm at work. This is a learning opportunity for me, and this is something that I need to know. So I'll go back and finish it up. Yeah,
it's definitely more stimulating.
Yes.
And I don't know, I think it affects. Yeah, like you said, you're there so long, like that. You're there more than you with your boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse,
exactly,
family, whoever, your own home, your own bed. That not being happy at work and not doing things to your full potential, like you truly, like it just affects everything else.
Yeah. And for me, I work a lot of overtime because there's a lot of things that they need to get done. Yeah. And while yes, it sucks that I have to give up some evenings or weekends or a couple hours here or there, it doesn't feel like a burden. I don't dread it. I mean, I'm not excited about working on a weekend, but I'm like, you know what, it needs to get done, and I don't mind doing it. So I had done a couple hours over Christmas break, but it wasn't the end of the world for me to do a couple things that made my life easier during the week.
Yeah, I think you need to find like a balance, like a good. That's like hard. I know from following you, like like. You go to the gym, which I mean I've talked about numerous amount of times. It's super important,
for sure,
just to keep your brain active and going.
Yeah.
That helps also with the stress of work, because you're like like it whatever, like you as long as, and keeping that, so it's like you say you have to do something at 9:00 and like that's when you're going to work. So like you have from 5 to 9, go to the gym, eat a good meal, maybe do something you like to do or something, and just like keep that balance.
Exactly.
And it's delicate, but like I think it's super important.
And for my job, you know, or any job, there's lulls and there's highs, and you know, sometimes I will just work my regular work week, and then there's sometimes I'll have worked, you know, 20, 30 hours extra that week just because there's so much that needed to get done. So I mean, it depends on what's going on and what to do and what needs to get done. But I remember there was one day I was emailing back and forth with my boss at 11:30 one night before a big meeting because something needed to get changed, something needed to get done, and I was working all day. Yeah. But it was appreciated, and I didn't mind doing it because it was something that I enjoyed doing, and I needed to get it done. Yeah. So
that's I read an article yesterday I posted. Is basically saying why millennials are the burnt out generation. When I saw it, I was like, oh my God.
Oh, I saw it.
Yeah,
but I
rolled my eyes. I was like, okay, like let's chill. Like let's chill, everybody. But then so I read it. I like to learn about what other people think. But it kind of brought up that point. So I know we're talking and it's all hunky dory. Like we're like, yeah, we don't mind working overtime and that's fine. And that's the way business is going for sure. But like that was the argument of the person's essay they wrote in the article was like, you know, millennials are they're emailing while they're in bed at you know 11:30 and not being, you know, compensated for it, and like it's just kind of expected because the task needs to get done. And whatever that reason is, there's the volume of work, the staffing shortage, whatever. But like that's what makes people that's what they meant by burnt out.
Right.
That
you're always on.
Exactly. We have these phones. Yeah. Work never goes too far away and people can contact you. Yeah. And that's what like older generations really don't understand. That, and especially as young people who are trying to establish themselves in their career, like, you know, you have ambition, you want to be something. So obviously, whether people are like, you don't have to answer an email that late at night, you're going to anyway, because you want to show that you're eager, you care, you want to set yourself apart from everybody else. Yeah. And whether that's a pressure that the business puts on or a pressure that you put on yourself, it's still kind of, the more people do it, the more it becomes expected.
Yeah.
That it's just like that needs to get done.
Exactly.
When in reality, if a project is like keeping people that long at the office, I mean, technically, like you should hire more people.
Yeah.
Not just specific to you or your
I
business,
agree.
but like that happens all the time. Like gamers, like people who are developing a game put in like 24 hours and sleep at the office. Like, you know, like I always have my phone and there's always email or social media that can get me for work. Like it's that's what they meant by burnt out, because we can never really turn it off.
Yeah, exactly. I went on vacation in September, October, and I checked my work emails every day. And I also feel a little bit of an obligation as a partner that if something came up, I'm available. Yeah. And it's not, you know, I'm not on my phone the whole time. I'll have, you know, one day I spent, I think, 2 hours in the hostel just kind of going through things that needed to get done. And it wasn't every day that it was that long, but it was, you know, something I needed to get done. And I'm in bed anyways, so.
Yeah. That's the thing about vacations too, right? Like, it's like before you go, you're trying to get everything done. And then when you come back, it's like a mountain of like emails and all these things.
Yeah,
and
I definitely put in the same hours that I'm gone before I leave. Yeah, exactly. And when I come back, trying to get things done.
It's almost like it's not worth it to take vacations sometimes. And
especially the longer vacations. If you're gone for like a day or two, it's something that can wait. But when it's like a week or two, it starts to get a little too much to get ready to go.
And people are checking emails while they're there. Like, you cannot turn it off. And I don't know what the fix is, if we're just going to accept it and it's going to be that way for the rest.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Because it's true, like, businesses, you know, now coming at it from an employee point of view, like, I'm not compensated for any of that time.
Right. Yeah.
I am not my job. I am not my job.
Yeah, yeah.
And that took me a long time to understand.
Right.
That the first thing I always identify as is my job.
Is your job.
In my dating profiles, on social media, on all that, I am a promotions person in radio. That was my job.
I read an article. It was about traveling, and I think it was like one of those lists of what we do as North Americans when we travel. And one of them was a lot of places don't ask you what you do, versus when we meet somebody new, you get their name and then, well, what do you do?
Yeah.
What's your job? You know, well, what are you in school for? Versus a lot of you get to know the person before you get to know their job in other sort of cultures
point.
And places. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
So for sure, I think as North Americans, we definitely identify as our job and then the rest of our life.
Yeah.
So it's hard to distance yourself from your work. I agree.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Now after another good tangent there. So you are, you're under 30, you're a woman, you're now a partner. How many other women partners are there?
There's one other.
Okay, how many partners are in total?
Oh, well, there's different levels too. So there's
Okay.
like seniors, which own more of the company. There's 3 juniors who we were all made partner around the same time, like me and 2 others, and then we just made a couple of newer people partners, so sort of own less of the company. So I think about 8 or 9 of us. There's 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Sell.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what's like the respect? I know you said you like your coworkers and stuff, but like as now a female engineer, you probably, I don't know, do you go to conferences and stuff like that?
I do. Yep.
So, I'm the partner at so-and-so, and they're like, what? Like, is it
I
shocking?
do get that a lot because I also look really young. So I get a lot that people think I'm like under 20 and I'm approaching 30, right? So people, first of all, at conferences assume I'm a student. Where do you go? And then I say, actually, like I'm working and I'm a partner at blah, blah, blah. So then that it more interests them about than what I do. And it doesn't, at the conferences that I've been to, it hasn't so much changed that, people's perspective of me, because I'm an engineer and that's already been established, which has, telling people I'm an engineer definitely does change their perception of me or what they think of me, which is hard to deal with. I mean, it's in a good way, but it's different than I think what it should be. But I think I haven't had to deal with too many people who are saying, like, oh, that's surprising that you're a partner at a firm. It's more, oh, like that's really cool. Like, congratulations.
Do you have to conduct yourself in like a very calculated and measured way at all?
So I do find that I change my voice when I'm trying to teach somebody something at work, or telling somebody else to do something. So I'm a supervisor for somebody and like a partner. So there are some things that come up that like it's up to me to tell somebody to do something, and I lower my voice. I've read studies that women who are in a male-dominated field lower their voice to seem sort of higher, I guess. I'm not sure exactly what the word is,
like
but
more like a man.
Yes, yeah. So
Okay.
like we change our voices with emails too. There's they've done studies and stuff about when you send an email as a man versus a woman, you say things differently. So as a man, they found you'll just tell someone to do something, versus a woman's more inclined to ask you to do something. So that's something that I've had to work on, right? So instead of saying like, can you do this report? It's do this report.
Okay.
You need to get this done. And it's such a small thing that like you typically wouldn't think of, but I have come, like it's happened at my job where like I've asked somebody to do something and then they didn't do it because they thought that they didn't have to do it. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So telling someone to do something is better, and something that I'm definitely working on myself.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because right now, the 3 people that I report to are all women. And like, I've never consciously found a difference in being managed by a woman and by a man.
And I don't know about radio, but I think for me, for engineering, most supervisors and most senior people are men.
Yeah.
So when we put together proposals, we have headshots of the people in the proposal, and especially for the technical aspects of the proposal that we're submitting on, they're men. They're senior men. You don't find very many women in a proposal for my job, and that's actually something that like we work on. I'm in a lot of proposals because you can have a picture of me as a woman.
Yeah.
And it's good that it's something that's changing, and it's, you know, people are more aware of the fact that we as women aren't given the opportunities or haven't been given those opportunities. So it's definitely something I see, and especially with the older generation where 90% of the people who are those senior technical people are men.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure about radio.
Well, media,
but,
I mean, you look at it, it was always a traditionally male-dominated field.
Yeah.
You know, through the 60s and 70s, all the, you know, whether you look on TV or radio, it was men. I think through the 80s and 90s and 2000s, it started to get better, so females were coming in. But they were co-hosts.
Right.
They were co-anchors, right? It was always a man and a woman,
Yeah.
and they were not the lead. It would
Right.
always start with the man, and they would go to the women for the opinion or commentary or to play off of it, right? Like that's how it's always been structured. I think, and I mean, I don't know. I'm not a woman in broadcasting, and I ask, you know, some of the ones I've talked to, like, what's it like? Do you find anything different? And so far, it seems like most find that it's okay. They don't see a whole lot of it. But I know I've heard some managers talk about how speaking to senior managers or whatever, like pitching an idea and stuff, and they're like, yeah, like, you know, kind of like let the men talk type thing.
Right.
Like,
I have actually had that once. It was
not that exact quote.
No, but like
Oh, jeez.
I'm the assistant project manager on like the biggest job that we currently have. And I was talking to one of my coworkers, and he was deferring to the guy I was sitting beside who didn't know anything about the job. So I would say something which was right and what needed to be done, and he would ask the guy who was sitting beside me who didn't know about the job. So it doesn't happen often, but there have been some instances where people, well, why am I talking?
Yeah.
You know, how do I know that? Why would I know that? You know?
That brings me to, so I went to get, my girlfriend was getting an e-test.
Okay.
And she was driving, and she rolled in, and he kept looking at me like, and I just like, buddy, it's not my car. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not involved. I'm just with her.
Yeah.
And then at the end, he called her. What he said, my dear or my sweetie, or he said one of those terms, and I was like, just kind of like, did he? Did he actually say that?
Did you say that out loud?
She's like, I think he did. I was like, oh my god. So like I see it.
Yes.
And you know, I try really hard to consciously not do anything that's demeaning, and I don't know if I do anything subconsciously.
Well, I think as long as you're aware of it, that's the first step, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first step.
Yeah.
As you're aware of it, and you try not to do it, and then it's up to, you know, other people to say, listen, I think that, you know, you said this and it came across as this, right?
It's a messy time for that.
It is.
Because a lot of people won't just be like, hey, listen,
no, that's true.
You probably shouldn't use this. You should use, it's like, you come after you.
Yeah.
Right.
Very
it's
defensive
outrage.
and
yeah.
Yeah.
And I have this, you know, conversation with a lot of people, and it actually would seem, I mean, based on my conversations with other women, that like they actually kind of lean more to like, no, that's actually like, I don't like when women do that. Right. But, you know, it's like they've been fighting for so long, and then you have Me Too come out, and you know, it's a turbulent time for all that, and you know, that women don't have that, you know, still have some of that discrimination where, again, he's talking to you're the project, but he's looking at the guy for confirmation on it, you know, like that stuff's not okay. But also, like, being abusive or harassing or this outrage type of, especially on social media, but like that's not winning the argument either.
No. There's definitely a sort of a good way to go about those situations. I think some people are just you can't talk sense into them. There was one guy I worked with at my summer job. You know, he was asking what I was doing, and I told him I was in school for engineering, and he laughed at me and told me I would never get a job, and was 100% serious, right? But like, and I mean, I could. Like you said, you know, go on the attack and whatever. And I was like, it's not worth it for me to try to attack him because he's not going to change his view. Like something needs to happen for that to change what he thinks about that.
Yeah. In my view, it's like that type of person, the outrage and like the attacking is just going to kind of reconfirm their beliefs that whatever the stereotype is that women are, you know, quote unquote, like crazy or irrational or like too emotional, like that type of stuff. Yeah. That they're just going to be like, oh, see, like you're just proving my point.
Exactly.
Type thing. That's my view of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like I can see the frustration. Like
definitely there.
That it's frustrating. Yeah, like especially like I don't know like if you date a lot or what dating's like, but I'm sure like, you know,
it's not great.
Yeah, like that's a pain in the ass too. That like and then like I don't know like. I mean, again, I don't know how much you date or how much you want to get into it, but like, I know some guys, which is weird, that it's like intimidating for the woman to be quote unquote more powerful or to have a more prestigious career path. Or
I mean, it's award season for Hollywood right now, right? Yeah. So there's I think it's called like the Oscar curse or something. So when a woman is married and they win an Oscar, typically you win an Oscar and you get bigger movies and your time to work on those movies is taken up. The divorce rate of those women who have won an Oscar and then become successful is very high.
Is that right?
Yeah. So I forget what study or, you know, where I read the stat, but a lot of the sort of Best Actress Oscar winners are divorced if they were married before, which is interesting, right?
That's
like
crazy.
Like, couldn't you just support that person? And it does sort of change things because yes, you become busier and you know, you're more in demand, and I get that, but yeah, I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, that is kind of bizarre.
Yeah.
Because you're usually dating like actresses date actors.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like there's not a lot of times you just like date like a regular person or someone lesser known. Like the famous people always get together with other famous people, it seems. So like I don't know, like again, if you don't want to get into it, that's fine. But like, do you find like if you're dating or talking to a guy, like does you as Darcie or you as Darcie as the engineer, does that like change how the conversation or the date or the
I don't know about
relationship?
Dating because I'm very busy and
no time for you guys.
Like, well, the guys that I've talked to on like, you know, online or met in person, they don't like that I don't have time for them, which is understandable. I get that, but I had one guy who got mad at me because he was only in Ottawa on Wednesday and I wasn't free on Wednesday, and he got and like started like texting me a lot and being like, well, why are we even talking if like you can't meet? And I'm like, you're in Ottawa one day this week. Like, how am I supposed to see you? Right. Yeah. Like I'm busy. And then, so not dating, but very similar is, I'd gone to Cuba with my friend. She's a nurse, and, we were just hanging out one night after some event that they had. And we were talking to these three guys, and, two of them were great and like, we were having a good conversation, and then their third friend came over. He was being really rude and obnoxious, and he had said, and I don't know where it came out of, or why he even said this, but he said something like, so like, what are you, like a secretary? And I was like, what? Like, why is that something that you said as like an insult, right? What would that matter? Mm-hmm. And then I said like, no, I'm an engineer and my friend is a nurse. And immediately his like how he acted towards us changed. So he was more respectful because, you know, we're an engineer and a nurse, not just a secretary. I was like, was
he like older? Was he?
No, he was
around...
like our age.
Yeah, that is a.
And was like Oh my
Bro,
gosh.
have you not been on the internet?
I
like,
know.
You can't do that.
Yeah. And I was very taken aback, and obviously I didn't like him before that, let alone after that. But I wouldn't say, like, in my dating life, I wouldn't really notice it. But there have been some instances where, like, I'm out and about or traveling, and people change when they hear that I'm an engineer.
It's weird.
It is.
Like, why,
yeah.
again, you shouldn't be defined by what you do.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, you're obviously intelligent, like you have passions, like, you know, that's one aspect of Darcie, but all of a sudden engineer, everyone's like,
ooh. No, and then they, you know, kind of perk up, and it's really weird to see, because there have been, like I said, that guy from Cuba, a few instances where immediately they've changed how they feel about me because they hear about what I do. And I know it's, you know, all a male-dominated field, but also typically when you think of an engineer, you think that they make a lot of money. And I mean, I hear that a lot. The most common responses when I tell people I'm an engineer are, "Oh, you're smart," or which is like, what do I say back to that, right? Like, sure. And oh, you must make a lot of money. And like both of those, I still don't know what to say. And I've been an engineer for 4 years.
Just be like, yeah, make it rain. Yeah. I mean, if he's cute, it could be like, you need a sugar mama or something. I don't know, but it's weird, and you know, I don't know. I don't envy that position of you.
Yeah,
I mean, Darcie, dating is messy enough as it is. Whether what you do or you know, it's so crazy right now, and you know, women have to worry about so much, and you know, men kind of have to worry about other things, and like I just don't know where it's going. I think going back to this whole like we just all need to sit down and just chat. What's up?
Yeah.
How are you? Like, we're really losing this human interaction where, you know, like, I don't understand why you have to have preconceived notions on somebody before, just because of whatever, their sex, race, color, sexual preference.
Why can't you just look at them as a person and not by, you know, what they do or what they look like, or just like them as a genuine person?
Are you reading that book that Casey's reading?
Which one?
Oh, she put on, what is it? I'm no longer talking to white people about race.
It's part of our book club, so I will be reading it this month, but I haven't read it yet.
I read a review.
Yeah?
Apparently that type of notion is racist.
Oh, everyone just gets all up in arms about everything these days.
Anyways, I'm not going to get into it, but we had a big discussion at work.
Yeah.
That because when you see, by ignoring race, so because people, right, like the typical thing, I see you as a human, that you're ignoring the fact of their past and the history and the systematic oppression. So
that is like a huge part of this people as a people, and I agree about that, but I don't know.
I know. That's when I was read that, I was like, because when she posted it, she posted on Instagram, I was like, oh boy, okay, let me go see what this is about.
There's Emma Watson, who is, you know, you would think a very big feminist, right?
Yeah.
She's talks about it, does interviews. She has a book club, and it's great. Like, I'm a part of it as well. But somebody had said that she was I want to say it's like a white feminist.
Yeah,
or, you know what I mean?
That's bad.
Yeah, so it's because she's not. It's not just like white versus black. It's, you know, if you're a man or a woman, or like, you know, what type of woman. I that sounds wrong, but you know, like there's more to it than just like a man versus a woman.
Well, yeah, I mean, going to that, because white femininity is bad because you still have privilege.
Exactly. Yes.
So they canceled a women's march in California, like the biggest one.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't enough there wasn't enough inclusiveness or representation.
Okay.
So they canceled it because like there's too many like white women in the march.
Right.
And that was discriminating towards Black, Asian, trans. Yeah. So anyways, I'm not going to get into that whole debate. Like, but by doing this, in my opinion, because I really like to listen to people who are on the right. I like to listen to people who are theoretical, who are, examining society, whether they're psychologists, sociologists. I like to hear them. And then I also follow people on the left, like the ones, and they give me the most kick of what they're doing because they fight themselves. Right. And I always considered myself left. Like, I've never voted conservative in my life.
Okay.
I'm all for, women's rights and LGBTQ right, like all for it. Like, have whatever you want. But I don't understand. So, instead of just everyone uniting and having women, like, that's why I don't subscribe to intersectionality. Yeah. Not that I don't believe in all their individual struggles as groups, but by doing that, like, I listen to right-wing people and they just laugh.
Right.
Because they're just like, watch them. They're just going to fight themselves.
Yeah.
Like, they don't have to do anything. So they're just like, we're just going to continue to build the wall over here. Yeah. Not to get too political into it. But when I saw she posted that book, I was like, oh boy.
Yeah. Well, I haven't read it yet.
Yeah.
So
I look at this through a very critical eye because I do want to understand. I have, Indigenous people in my family, so I want to understand what's going on, and those communities and those hardships. So I want to understand what everyone's going through. But I can't take it seriously when you just keep breaking everything down into groups, and the some people call it the oppression Olympics.
Okay.
Right? So there's the hierarchy. So straight white man, you're bad. Straight white woman, you're second bad. And then you go down to who's worse off as you go down. Who has it worse? Right. Like, who has it the worst? And it's like, no, I have it the worst because of this. No, I have it. And you're just arguing about who has it worse. Right. Okay, so how are we putting policy forward? How are we
making it better?
How are we making it better?
Yeah.
Because really you want to fight the people who are actually racist, not the white female who is like, yeah, everyone should have rights. And you're like, no, you're white, bad. And it's like, and I even talked to, if you turn your head, there's, a person who, colored. So I asked, I'm like, dude, like what's going on from your perspective? And he's like, nah, man, like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy right now. And it's just,
for sure.
I don't know where it's going, but it's a crazy world, and I'm trying to keep up, and I see more and more nonsense.
Yeah. I think we're at the tipping point, right?
That's what some people say. Yeah. The pendulum, like we're, the slavery was over here and now we're over this. But one of the people brought a really good point that it was once, right-wing Christian, people who were trying to silence free speech and arts and music, right? Like, it was the 70s and 80s where, moms against metal music and all that. Like, they were the ones stifling free speech.
Right.
Now it's totally on the other end.
Yeah.
And
we're
it's
just in this, we're like a cyclic race.
Yeah. And now,
just keep coming back, or, there's still something to fight. So if we get through this, there's going to be something else.
Yeah. And I'm just like, there's actually like I talked about it last episode with Dana. I was like, there's like a huge crisis in Yemen right now, humanitarian crisis with famine, and I believe there's genocide, and I was talking about like rape in India and how that's a huge thing. I'm like, there are some real things going on here, but we're all fighting each other on kind of trivial things. I mean, there's a lot of it's very important, but there's also a lot of things that are just like semantics, and we're just arguing over nothing. And like, let's actually get to real issues and solving it. Yeah. My uncle, who works in immigration, he's in Senegal right now. Who he interviews refugees, and basically his like point of view down there. He's like, oh man, like they're like super racist towards me and my family and all this stuff. And I'm just like, you got to take these people who are making all these arguments and put them in another part of the world to understand how everything kind of works.
That's true.
Because you hear it, like,
we only see and hear sort of the small part of things that are going on in our part of the world.
Yeah, exactly.
There's so many other things that are going on in places we don't even hear about, right? That like we have no context for and can't put ourselves in that situation unless you're there. And I mean, there's so many things that changes those perspectives of people who are in that position, but it's hard to put yourself in that position.
Yeah, when you don't see it. And I mean, a majority of the arguments come from America, and we know Americans don't tend to travel.
Yeah.
to see a global perspective.
I remember, I don't know, I think it was like a friend of a friend or something who said that they'd gone to a third world country and said that they're never going back because they don't want to see how they live. They just want to turn a blind eye to the fact that people live in poverty. And I was like, that's not really a great way to live. You can't just ignore that there's bad things going on in the world, right? Or like that people live differently than you. And first of all, you don't have to go to a different country to see people living in poverty. You see it here. Yeah. But it's, I don't know. I was flabbergasted when I heard that.
To me, that's the definition of privilege.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? That
they can just turn a blind eye.
I can close my blind in my window and just follow the Instagram person and everything's great. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. The thing that I really wanted to make a point of this, I'm coming on because I think it's truly inspiring. And when you sent me that message, I thought it was really great. And I think it can make a difference for a lot of people because what you said is I'll let you tell the story and paint the picture. Sure. But that you started out with almost nothing. Yes. And like this is truly all from maybe a little bit of luck, but truly hard work. Yeah, so I grew up poor in a small town. I was that person that people made fun of because my clothes were hand-me-downs and I had to shop at Goodwill. And, kids as bullies, that's the thing that they pick on, right? And I think my mom had a lot to do with where I am right now because she was, she pushed us to do things. She pushed us to do well in school and to follow our passion. So yes, it's great for me that my passion is math and science, which typically you do very well in society if that's what you can do well at. But she's very supportive of everything that we did. I grew up definitely below the poverty line and got into Queens. So I couldn't get through without my scholarships. I had a couple and bursaries, which you don't have to pay back. Scholarships you don't pay back, and grants, and then OSAP. So, and then I worked sort of minimum wage jobs in the summer, and just did my best to get by. And yeah, for sure, hard work and intelligence definitely helped me get through university to get a job and to be where I am now. And I would say the lucky part is that Google told me I should be an engineer, and that seemed to work out for me. But and it's definitely part of my past and trying to that's part of me and If there was, say 14-year-old girl, grade 9, I guess that would be right now. And she's like, I want to, similar situation, small town, poor, but she's like, I want to become successful. And you had a chance to give her some advice. Do you know what that would be? I would say you have to follow your passions because you're not going to do as well in something that you're not passionate about. And you're not going to excel in it if you're not passionate. I have a friend of mine from back home who, was into the arts and photography. And I think typically you think of that as a harder job to go towards. And she's a very successful photographer and wedding photographer. And she does really well. So I think that's something that follow your passions, whether it's art or math or science, and then practice. For me, it was, solving math problems and physics problems at school. For somebody who's in the arts, practice your painting or your photography and hone those skills. Because you're not going to excel at something that you don't care about. Yeah, be relentless in that passion. That's what for sure I believe in personally, and what I try to tell young people when I'm talking to them as well. It's maybe you might not know it as early as, say, I did or you did. It might take a little while. It might be 26 and 27, 30. Some people may never find it. I don't know. Yeah. But if you find that, be relentless in that passion. Exactly. Follow it. Do what you need to do. And work hard at it. To work hard. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Quickly, because I know you have a tight deadline. Yes. You mentioned earlier that you have a travel blog. Yes. I mean, it's not mean for me to say that. I mean, our generation loves traveling. So I'm not going to ask you why you love traveling. People love traveling.
Yes.
But what experiences has traveling really brought to, your job, lessons that like you learned that were big for you?
I've been on a couple solo trips, so like gone to by myself. The first one I did, I went to London, Dublin, and Belfast.
Which is crazy because some people won't even like go to eat out or go to a movie alone.
Yeah, so I think that was a big thing too. So my birthday is St. Patrick's Day, so I went to Dublin for my birthday a couple years ago. Yeah, and I would say that was hard because most people go to festivals like that with friends. So it definitely pushed me to talk to people that I may not have approached normally, right? So bringing that back here, it's definitely helped me in my social life where I can strike up a conversation with someone, whereas like before having those experiences, I probably wouldn't have.
Which people find strange now, don't you find? It's funny.
Yeah, and people tell me I'm like an outgoing person, and I'm definitely not. But I think those experiences traveling have helped, and to be able to talk about like traveling, which most people seem interested in and want to hear about, at least a couple minutes before they want to talk about something else. But yeah, and then so that's definitely something, and being able to do things by myself. So like I've gone to the movies by myself. I had time, and I didn't even ask anybody. I was like, I'll go to the movies or go out to lunch. I don't like going out to dinner by myself. It's definitely more intimidating to do dinner than like lunch. But when you're traveling, like you got to eat, right? So if I'm hungry, I'm definitely going to stop in at like a pub and have some food, or a restaurant or any time of the day. So that's been really good. And another thing it's helped me to travel as much as I have is budgeting. It's like my second passion. I love it. I love trying to save money and seeing where I can save money to do things and have experiences, right? So to be able to, I save like a monthly amount, and that allows me to be able to say yes when someone asks me to travel, because I've already thought about saving that money, even though I don't have a plan for it yet. So that's another thing and it's more the budgeting helped me travel, which has helped me in other aspects of my life, which has been really nice. And then just sort of seeing how other people live. So like I went to Iceland with my friend Casey, who was on here a couple episodes ago, and I think it was in the 90s, like 90+% of their energy is renewable. Which is huge, right? And like the whole country. And there was some advertisement because they were putting up like those huge like hydro transmission tower poles. Like they're huge. So it was interesting to see like how other people can make these things work. Or even I went to, I think it was Prague in like the Czech Republic. And I did one of the walking tours. So he said, if you walk into a restaurant in the Czech and you're greeted friendly, big smile, welcoming, leave. Because, and he said this, the Czech are not friendly. You walk in, you sit down, you might have to wait in half an hour for a waiter or a waitress to come and talk to you, but that's their culture. It's not rude for them, right? Versus here, if you don't have your water within 5 minutes of sitting down, you're like ready to leave, right? And same with like things like tipping. We just don't even think about it here because you have to. Like you have to when you go to a restaurant, but other places you don't have to, or it's rude if you do. So
I didn't know it was rude, but I got burnt on the not knowing, so I was just tipping everybody, and then they'd bring me chocolates and candies, and they were super happy.
Yep. And like, I think most people appreciate it, but most places that I have traveled don't even have an option for tipping. Versus here, like you go anywhere, and it's like, what percentage tip do you want?
You're an awful person if you don't tip. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. Or like, what has the person done wrong that you didn't tip, right? And then, I would say the biggest thing is like social. So, being in a hostel by myself, like how do you make friends? Talk to people, say hello and initiate a conversation. And typically if the other person's alone, they want someone to initiate a conversation, right? Because they're alone and don't know how to start it up. And
well, especially today, like no one does that.
No.
That's what I mean by it's strange. Like if you were like, "Hey, how are you today?" People would be like,
"Yeah,
why are you talking to me?"
Yeah, exactly. Like, why are you smiling at me?
Yeah,
walk away.
Are you crazy?
Yeah. But so I would say that's definitely helped me in my social life.
Fine. Would you? I mean, to a lot of people, that's scary. Traveling alone, going somewhere alone.
Yes.
You know, safety is one, especially as a woman. You know, I know Europe gets a sex trafficking, human trafficking type thing vibe as well.
Yes.
Would you recommend it to people? Did you like?
I do. I
even like people who might be introverted or.
I think it's better for people who are introverted because you can just go and experience things the way that you want to experience it, right? I've traveled with friends and I've traveled by myself, and I wouldn't say I prefer one over the other, but they're definitely different experiences. When you're with friends, you don't have to make an effort to talk to people, right? So you could stay in the group that you went with and not have to talk to other people, versus when you're alone, to have that conversation, you need to talk to people, and then you get to know their experiences. So like I was in Prague and met a girl from Spain and a girl from England, and we ended up going for a drink and hanging out after and you know, talking about our experiences as female solo travelers and what they encountered when, you know, they've traveled and what has happened. And so I definitely recommend it. I think it might be harder for someone who's an extrovert, unless you're going to things where like they have the walking tours and beer tours and pub crawls and that kind of stuff as a way to meet people. But I love it. I'm all for it. I think you get to experience the world the way that you want to, and
must really change you as a person too. Like to be able to have realize that you just did that, the confidence. The really finding yourself, because you're in a city, you don't know anybody. You have to figure it out.
When I was traveling, it didn't change my opinion of myself, but it was interesting the conversations that I had with people who found out I was by myself. So like I did, if you ever go to Belfast, I 100% recommend I think it's the Patty Campbell's Black Taxi Tour. So I went and you drive around with a taxi driver for a couple hours, 1 to 2, and they give you a history of Belfast in Northern Ireland. And he was so taken aback that I was traveling by myself, and at that time I was mid-20s, and he thought I was 18 and was very surprised. He thought I just graduated high school. But he was, you know, he asked me if I was worried about my safety or how I felt being by myself, and I didn't really have any issues with it. And I think the biggest thing, especially as a female solo traveler, is just being aware of your surroundings, and being mindful of where you are. So far my experiences have been like London, you know, that's pretty English culture, and I haven't had too many bad experiences. Walking in the street, I went in Budapest, and I went around with my camera at like between 7 and 10 p.m. on like a Thursday night, and like I had no issues. Never felt unsafe walking by myself through this foreign city. And if something happened, I, you know, had my phone and could be prepared. But I would just say be mindful and aware. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Well, listen, because I know you got to go.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I truly think that, you know, that story of you starting with nothing and moving to a position now and, you know, being under 30 and, you know, being a partner and an engineer thing, I think that's huge. And I think a lot of people can draw from that, whether you're female or male, whatever, but like just that things are possible, like no matter, it's a lot harder, I'm sure.
Hard work.
Yeah.
Keep your head up.
And yeah, so where can people follow you, find you, especially that blog, so they can hit it up? Yeah,
so my blog is called Passportunities. So it's a combination of the words passport and opportunities. So I'm on Instagram, and I have a WordPress blog, passportunities.ca, and I just write about my travels and the planning side of things, a little bit about photography and fitness. and I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all the social
as
media.
past opportunities.
Yes.
Perfect. Well, Darcie, I appreciate it. Safe travels.
Perfect.
And
Thank you.
We'll talk to everyone soon. Bye.
You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.